Alright, today we're going to be tearing into a 1997 Honda Foreman 400. We're going to tear completely into this motor, rebuild this complete motor from the transmission to the crankshaft, and just go through it completely. We're going to start by disassembling this top end and showing you how this top end works on this Foreman 400. So first thing we're going to do, pull these 10mm bolts up top here. This is your cylinder head cover. We've got rockers underneath here and your valves to adjust valves, and check that video out. I made one of those as well, but we've got a handful of 14mm nuts up here. I'm going to go ahead and remove these, and they are obviously a little snug. To pull these rockers, what you're going to do is pull that 10mm bolt, and that is going to allow this the shaft to pull out, let's see, this way out of here, and then you'll be able to replace those rockers. That head, or this cover now, is going to be able to be pulled off here. Your rockers will stay with that assembly as well. And there is your adjust screws there, and just make sure these are free. Here's your push rods here, and they can be pulled out now. Two of those, the exact same length, and those run actually all the way down to your bottom end to your camshaft, and I'll show you how to get there and remove that camshaft and replace that. But to start, we'll disassemble some of this top end parts here, get the rest of these nuts off of here. We're going to move this, flip this motor around, as we've got 10mm bolts over here that need replaced, and those are down there a little bit farther, so we've got an extension on a smaller 1/4-inch drive. Pull these out. Now that head is actually completely ready to come out of there, and I'm going to go ahead and remove this intake boot now. That is takes an 8mm. It's a rubber boot here. They have a tendency to crack with all the heating and cooling, and make sure that seal, this O-ring, is good and it needs replaced every time. That will come with your gasket set. So now this head's ready to come off now. Your valves obviously come with it. Here's your exhaust valve on this side, your intake on this side. Gasket here, another gasket that will come with it. And there is your cylinder head. Flip it over. There's your valves there. Exhaust intake is a little bit bigger on this model. And now we've got your cylinder. We've got this is called a head gasket here. This is a thicker gasket. And throw those away, as those you'll obviously want to replace those. 10mm on this bottom one here. To get to the cylinder, I think that's it for that. Go ahead and pull up on that. So then you're able just to remove that off of there. There's your cylinder. Check your walls for any kind of scoring. Make sure that's in good condition. Now to remove your piston, I take a pick, got a 90° on it. Take your circlip and pry in the little groove there. I put my finger over top of it. Sometimes you stab yourself with the pick, but allows that pick not to go flying. And you take another finger, push out that pin, and then keep everything together. So when we're rebuilding this motor, because this piston is good, you take that clip then, and I take the open part, slide it in the groove that way, stick it back in there just like that. We can clean the top of that off. That piston is actually in extremely good condition, and that is good. Now we've got your cam chain tensioner right here. We can remove that at this time. I'm going to flip this up. We're going to remove this so we can get to the camshaft. So to do that, we've got to remove this cover here, right side of your four-wheeler. So we've got 1, 2, 3 10mm, 4 10mm to remove this cover. And to do just the top end, you can do that without pulling the motor. So keep that in mind. These top ends on these 400s are extremely easy to do. Watch this video, you'll be able to do it. No problems. If you have questions, leave me a comment. Subscribe so that when we go back together with this motor, you'll have our videos handy. Cover's off now. I kind of like to keep the top end bolts all together, so make sure those all stay together. We don't do anything with the starter yet, although at some point we will. And then I'm going to take this motor and flip it up so you guys are able to see a little bit better. I'll drained out. Now you should be able to see a little bit better. We've got 10mm bolts all the way around this. This is obviously your oil filter cover here. 10mm bolts to remove that. You've got 3 of them. To remove this cover, I don't think these are stock bolts. To remove this cover, you don't actually have to remove this oil filter cover, but we're going to remove it because this will obviously be replaced going back together. And I think these are generally 8mm bolts all the way around. In this case, this guy replaced them with some 10mm. A little bit of oil left in there. There's your filter there. Throwing that away, that's not going to get reused. And we'll replace that cover with the right bolts. 13 bolts going around that cover there. And if I was going right back together with this motor, I would say start wherever you want. Say at the oil filter, so I'd set this bolt down, that bolt down, that bolt down, that bolt down, in the order that you take them off. That way you know, but we're gonna have to throw these in a box when we go ahead and rebuild this later. We'll figure out where they go. It's not a big deal, it just saves a little bit of time if you're going right back together with it, which we're not. So next you're gonna take a rubber mallet or a plastic mallet and tap. And that is your cover there. So that is your cover. There is your clutch adjust. I showed you in other videos how to adjust that clutch there. So check those out. Takes 1 1/16 socket. Deep well is probably preferred here, but this actually is going to work. Dinged up. These nuts are dinged. And that's just to hold it together. I want to make sure when we go back together that we ding in those positions. That way it doesn't work those nuts free. Go ahead and remove it. It's a regular thread, so just counterclockwise to remove it. Just a larger nut and a washer there. And then pull up, and sometimes these are difficult as well. They actually make a special tool, but I've never owned that special tool. I've always been able to remove them without. So these centrifugal clutches are 2-piece pieces. I'm just going to remove this because this is going to keep falling. That is to the clutch there. The centrifugal clutch pulled off on this Honda Foreman 400. And centrifugal clutch there. We've got your one-way bearing here. And what you can see that does there is it will just spin one way. So it spins freely that way. You try to turn it that way and it turns the whole thing. So make sure that that is in good condition. Your outside you need to be able to see your outside, or the lettering that says outside, and make sure that's in good condition. Now to finish removing this camshaft, now we've got your cam chain tensioner here, and that takes a 10mm. And when we go back together, we'll want to loosen the Phillips that's in the middle. Just takes a tap there, replace that gasket there. And now there's plenty of slack on that cam chain. Now what we can do, I'm going to scoot this motor over so I can get to it a little bit better, is there is 2 caps here, and that the push rods sit down in. There's one there, and the other one is here. If we leave these in, which you wouldn't want to do because you will they'll fall down inside your motor. If all you're doing is your top end, no reason for those to fall down into your motor. So we'll go ahead and remove the sprocket here, and I kind of try to hold that cam chain and wiggle too much on those chains, and then we're able just to pull that sprocket off. And if all we're doing is replacing that cam shaft, we can actually just leave this chain hooked up, set these down in there. Otherwise, we're going to have to disassemble this clutch to get to this. We've got a 12mm bolt there that we're going to have to remove. And that's a holder for your cam chain or your cam shaft. So now you just take that cam shaft, work it out just like that. There's your cam shaft. Take your sprocket. We can put it back on there just to hold everything together. We're going to keep on going here. We've got your centrifugal clutch off already. Now we're going to pull your clutch pack off. Steel plates, here's your shift mechanism there. 10 millimeter, and this spins freely like that now, so got to hang on to it. And I loosen these all up just a little bit at a time. They are spring loaded, and the springs are fairly heavy duty, so if you don't do that, sometimes you can break a post off on your actual clutch basket, and that's not a cheap fix. So keep those bolts together, keep those springs together. Remove that bolt there, same thing. We got to ding that nut up so that it doesn't back itself off of there. And I just take and put my thumb right on a post there to keep this from spinning. Spin that right off, regular threads. Oh, that washer will come off. Now what I do is take, since we're not doing anything with this clutch pack, we can keep it together. I throw my bolt back in there to keep that together, and I take and put these back in. And then what I do is tighten these up, and you don't need to get them completely tight. Make sure they're started before you start tightening them up so that you don't cross thread those posts on that basket. So now they are snugged up. Now we're able to pull that plate off just like that, and it's all held together. And then we can pull that basket off as well. I set those back down in there. You can pull it all apart, inspect every piece, but this clutch was good, we knew that, and so we didn't really need to take it completely apart. And then this piece sits on behind your clutch in that area. Now, if we're getting to that cam chain, we can pull this off. That sits on the back of that centrifugal clutch. This spline piece, we've got a guide here and a guide here. There's your oil pump, and that is removed with 3 10 millimeter bolts. And then that guide, and actually that guide kind of sits down underneath of there, isn't completely connected, but you do have to pull that pump, or at least loosen it to get that off of there. That just pulls up out of there. Just sits right in there. You know, inspect that, make sure there's no major wear. There's your oil pump there. It turns down inside this case. We'll be able to see that from the other side a little bit better. We'll set that with the cam chain part. We've got another guide here. 2 10 millimeter bolts. We'll remove that guide. That guide looks like that there. Tensioner pushes it right here, putting tension on that chain. And then we're able to just take our chain and lift it off of there. Small little chain. A lot of them run all the way down from the crank all the way up to the top end, so they're a much longer chain. Now this shift mechanism here, we can move that aside enough. We can get to this 10 millimeter that sits on the actual drum. And then we can pull all this up together. Try to keep all those pieces together. That just slides up out of there. So that kind of sits around. It's kind of hard to see there, but this is all separate. I'll set it all here so you can kind of watch it as I take this all apart. And then we've got this spring arm here. Pull that up together, and I just had a small washer fall down in there. Now this star will just come right off of there, and so will this pin here, so just keep an eye on that. There's only one place on that star that pin will go. Now we can flip this over and start disassembling the stator, and we've got 2 10 millimeter bolts over here to pull this plastic cover, and see more of this on the other side. We're getting to the stator, the charging system. Okay, now we're going to deal with the charging system on this Honda Foreman 400. Got the recoil pull starter, 4 8 millimeter bolts to pull that off. I already loosened these up when I was checking valves on this one. You want to make sure that when you pull this pull starter that this arm comes out right here, and make sure that when you let it go it comes back. If it's not doing that, you've got issues with your pull starter. You've got your recoil cup here, and I guess we can pull that off at this time. We've got some sensors. We've got your ground wire here. That's just a 10 10mm bolt. Your starter here. I'll pull this starter now. The starter takes two 10mm bolts. One of them's already out. There's the other one. And then we've got actually the hot wire coming in here. And that is a nut that holds that wire on. I'm going to set that back with it. That is the hot wire coming from your starter solenoid here. And to pull this starter, then you just push that back. And sometimes you got to have a small crowbar or a large screwdriver to get that in. There's a couple O-rings that seal this up. A lot of times it does a really good job of sealing it up. But there is your starter there. We'll make sure it spins freely. We'll hook it up to power, test it, make sure that it's in good working condition before going back together with it. It's been working fine, so there shouldn't be any issues there. Now we've got your recoil pull starter. That's a 17mm bolt. That's off there. It goes directly into the crank. Large bolt there. And so that is recoil pull starter. This bolt's separate there. We got bolts all the way around this, 10mm bolts. All right, 11 10mm bolts all the way around this. When replacing your idler gears, which does need to happen every so often, you'll do the exact same thing. You'll pull this same cover here, gasket seal, but it does have a magnet in behind there, so this is going to be a little bit of a challenge to get off. Just pull it like that. That O-ring was holding us up too. But we've got your idler gears here, your stator assembly here. Make sure these washers go back on where they're supposed to go. You got your pulser and your position sensor there. Obviously your flywheel or your stator there. And I will show you, or I have showed you in past videos, how to test this stator to make sure it's in good condition. So check those videos out. And your idler gears here, 2 sets of them. This will go directly onto the starter here, and this obviously just spins when the starter is spinning. Spins this gear here, and then it goes back and spins this one. We're just gonna be able to pull the top one off of this, as this other one's behind the flywheel there. So that's part of the idler gear system. Now we can pull all these bolts around the outside here. Shift shaft is over here. We've got a gear position sensor underneath here. There's the wire going to it, and then I'll show you that sensor when I get that pulled off. But to keep going with the stator assembly here, got 10mm bolts. Okay, that's 10 bolts total that I counted there, and that's including these 2 for this sensor. That sensor's off. There's a plate here, a little plastic plate. So that'll stay with the sensor, and then this seal, which that seal will get replaced, but we'll keep that all together. And we'll pull all these bolts off. Here's a cable holder on this one. And those bolts are off. Your dipstick is here. Didn't take much again. We're getting caught on the reverse shifter here. Reverse shift lever. Sometimes these seals get old or they get debris in them and cause it to kind of stick. So that's what's going on, but we're getting closer here. There we go. All right, this cover is off now. That's what it looks like underneath. There's our shift assembly here, your shift arm. And so that shift this. That's your cover there. Replace that gasket. The shift. This goes all the way to the other side. And remember that washer that I started to take off but then didn't? That would have fell on the other side now. So that went with these pieces here. So this slides onto this there. And there's only one spot that will go. Your reverse arm here, and that is spring loaded. Actually, it looks like that's not even positioned quite right. That needs to come spin back before it can be pulled off. You can see when we spin it back like that, that arm comes up from that case, and the spring is actually broken, which is probably why we're having the issues we're having with this motor. So to finish out this flywheel, or the charging system on this, grab a puller, looks like this. Let me know if you need one. I do sell them. All different brands of them. Motion Pro, I would say, is a more well-known brand. K&L makes another one. But you don't want to just use a bolt. This is hardened steel. They can run it in. Just like a bolt threading in there. And what happens is you're pushing against the crank. Runs right into the crankshaft there, pushing it out. So once you get it off, no need for the puller anymore. That's all you need that puller for. But these pullers are pretty cheap compared to some of the other flywheel pullers. Here's your one-way gear. It's your starter clutch gear. Here's your starter clutch bearing assembly. That'll only go one direction. You can see I'm not allowed to spin the other way. And then our bearing that sits in behind here. Here's a Woodruff key here. If for whatever reason you gotta take that out, you can just tap on it with a screwdriver. Then we can finish taking our idler gear out. That's a gear reduction, is what that one's called. We've got our 17 millimeter bolt down here for the sensor. And there's the sensor there. I'm gonna flip this up, or I'm gonna flip this over. We're gonna do some checking because now we're going to go ahead and get ready to split that crankcase. And there is a bunch of 10 millimeter bolts. 1, 2, 3. And to replace this battery. Alright, and there's one down here, kind of below the output shaft that is seated kind of clear down in there. We've got to get a smaller socket for that. Maybe even a longer extension. And then we do have bolts on the other side. Not very many of them. One in the up here. All right, I'm not seeing any more. We'll find out if that's all of them or not. You're really careful where you tap on this at. Generally there's a couple spots that you can. Sometimes what you can do is just I like to put pressure against each other. And a lot of times it doesn't take hardly any hitting at all, and it'll split that apart as long as you have pressure. And I just kind of take my hand, twist it in there, and a lot of times that'll allow you to break it apart like that. The seal's the main thing. Once you get that seal broken apart, a lot of times that's all you need. So then you grab a rubber mallet. And I like to, as soon as I'm starting to break free like this, I like to figure out which way all the gears are staying. Kind of set it down that direction. So then you're able to just lift this up. Nice one washer for sure. that we're gonna have to figure out where it goes. This shaft here, right here. That shaft's gonna come up with us, but that's a crankcase split. There's your output shaft there. Got your crank here and your balancer gear. We might have to tap that out from the other side. Nice to pull that out, but here is your shift drum here. This is gonna sit down in there. So a lot of times you pull this fork shaft out of the way. Sometimes you can kind of move everything at once. There's your drum there. There's your gear that goes on this output shaft there. Now we're able just to lift these forks and all out together. A couple washers we're gonna need to find where they went, but that's easy enough to do with a microfiche. That one's there. And sometimes, a lot of times, like this shaft or this washer here, it would only fit in one spot. So there's those gears. This one here, a lot of times there's a washer that sits on the end of them. That one there, there's a washer down here. Oh, there's not. Oh, it looks like there is. There is, but I'm gonna flip this up. This crank isn't gonna take much, I don't think. Now the crank's out, the balancer a lot of times will just slide out. So that is a crankcase split on a Honda Foreman 400 four-wheeler.